Today we're going to have a continuation of our discussion about the sun. Okay, and this time we're going to talk about sunspots and solar cycle. So how sunspots and solar cycle are used to determine the activity of the sun. Okay, so let's have a brief recall of what was discussed last Tuesday. So we started with we started with wait, still working on my so we started with a discussion of the internal and surface structure of the sun as well as its atmosphere. So basically these are your basic components of the sun. So interior to the sun, you have your core, and then you have your core where your energy is generated mainly, and then the energy is transferred to the surface through two different zones. First is through the radiation zone, wherein the dominant energy transfer or dominant mode of energy transfer is radiation. And then after radiation, the energy that is being dissipated or transferred to the surface will be through convection. And one of the main reasons why we had a convection zone, one of the reasons we know that there's a convection zone just underneath the surface of the sun is through the granulation cells. And then on the surface of the sun, we can see several features. We have your sunspots, which we're going to talk about today. On the side, you're going to observe your prominences, which are usually mistaken to be called as solar flares. So they are not flares, they are prominences. And then you will have your filaments, and then etc. etc. Okay, so just to give you a brief recap of what was discussed last week. Okay, so we started with the discussion of how energy is being or what is the mechanism that or the dominant mechanism or the dominant reactions, or what we call this, the dominant process that generates energy in the core is your fusion between two protons or two hydrogen isotopes, two hydrogen ions in the form of protons, and it will yield helium ions. Okay, so the net energy production for this kind of chain involving four hydrogen atoms or four hydrogen nuclei and a helium nuclei is about 26.73 mega electron volts. And you can multiply this to all possible combinations or all possible number of all possible number of reactions that may happen in the core. So that will be that will produce a very large amount of energy. Okay, not discounting yung quantum mechanical considerations in terms of the number of yung tinatawag na mga tunneling effect. So those are also important things to consider when we talk about energy generation inside the core of the sun. Okay, and then this energy is being transferred through the radiation zone and through the convection zone in order to determine how density, temperature, and other parameters are estimated to vary with distance from the center of the sun. Okay, so one of the first things that we discussed there was to discuss or to introduce or to assume that there is pressure balance inside the sun. So that means the pressure gradient that is exerted outward by the plasma is actually countered or balanced by the gravitational force of the components of the interior of the sun. And then we have several discussions about this derivation. But the point here is that using this pressure balance equation, we were able to derive differential equations that will be used later to estimate how density, mass, temperature, pressure varies with radius. Okay, so through the radiation zone and convection zone, we were able to derive how the temperature in the radiation zone as well in the conduction zone varies with time, varies with the distance from the center of the sun. Okay, so these four equations are actually used to estimate how density, temperature, and consequently pressure as well as mass varies with distance from the center of the sun. So this is basically what we discussed last week. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the proofs that convection cells or a convection layer is present underneath the surface of the sun is through the granulation cells. Okay, wherein you can see that it's very similar to how the surface of a boiling, water. Okay, so you will notice here that material is coming out of this convection cells or granulation cells, and then some of the material are being replaced underneath by the other materials that are cold that went cold the surface of the sun. Okay, and this is for a regular granulation cell area wherein there is not much activity happening, but if there is activity happening, for example, in the surface of the sun where sunspots are actually present, you can actually see those convection movement. Okay, so in this case, you will notice here that the plasma material at the surface of the sun is actually sinking in through this sunspot. Okay, you can actually notice here. No? Hopefully, makita niyo yung ano, no? If you want to see the high resolution version of this video, please let me know so that I could upload it in our Blackboard. Okay, so in connection to this, let's talk about sunspots in the next coming slides. Okay, and how sunspots are used to monitor the activity of the sun. So by the way, no, on your left-hand side, on your right-hand side, is an actual video of observation of sunspots. This is active region. Forgot the active region. I think this is 2871, if I'm not mistaken. So this is actually captured from 2 days ago. Sorry, September 20. Yeah, 2 days ago or 3 days ago until last night's. So September 22. So you can see that we can actually use the sunspots to estimate the period of rotation of the sun. Okay? Sige. Am I being heard clearly ba?
Yes, sir.
Am I noisy? Hindi naman. Do I have a
Hindi
background
po, sir.
noise? Hindi naman. Okay, very good.
None
Sige.
po.
Okay, so let's start. So let's have a brief recall because sunspots are actually portions of the sun with very strong magnetic field, no, local magnetic field. So let's have a brief recall of the usual configuration of the solar magnetic field. Okay, so as you can see in this figure, the left-hand side is a schematic diagram of the different kinds of components that you can see in the surface of the as a magnetic field configuration, no? Exterior to the sun. Okay, so the left side is actually a model called the current sheet source surface model for the coronal magnetic field. And as you can see here that the magnetic field of the sun generally is composed of several components. You have your radial components, you have your dipole components, and of course you have your neutral sheet component, wherein field lines are have canceled each other because they are directed opposite to each other. Okay, so this is an example of that. Okay, and we're going to use this model, especially the radial component, the component of the sun's magnetic field that passes through the poles. So this is your dipole component, the radial and dipole component. Okay, in order to explain the solar dynamo. So we say the solar dynamo, just like your terrestrial dynamo, the solar dynamo basically describes the how magnetic field of the sun is generated and change over time. Okay, so one important thing that we have to know here is that the sun's surface is actually rotating at different rates at different latitudes. So we call that your differential rotation. So we're in fact, okay, at the equator, the sun is moving faster than the components of the sun near the poles. Okay, so if this is the initially the rotation of the sun is in this direction. I hope you can see it now. Okay, and then you have your magnetic field generated like this because the sun is rotating faster at the equator. So that means the magnetic field at the equator is actually being sheared away from the main magnetic field line. So by the way, now this is a schematic diagram from Dick Patty and Gilman 2007 shows the boundary of this, the core of the sun and then the surface of the sun. And in between them are your radiation and convection zone. Okay? Sige. Okay, sige. So this figure shows the shearing of a poloidal field by the sun's differential rotations near the bottom of the convection zone. So this is your convection zone. And then this toroidal field is resulting, the toroidal field, as you can see here, is actually a result of the shearing by the differential rotation. So you will notice here at the northern part, the magnetic field is actually generally pointing to the left in this figure. And then at the bottom, it will point at toward the left, toward the right. So because of differential rotation, there will be a generated magnetic field that is pointing in this direction in the northern hemisphere and in this direction in the southern hemisphere. Now, when this toroidal field is strong enough, this field will actually rise up towards the surface. And then because of the differential rotation and due to Coriolis effect, this field will actually emerge at the surface. Okay, so this from here, additional fluxes emerge, starting from a very small emergence of magnetic field lines, and then it will actually start to grow. Okay, and then you will notice that here you can see your magnetic field sticking out and then going back to another side like this one. Okay, so this is an example of where your sunspots are actually formed. Okay, so the meridional flow, okay, so that means the latitudinal flow of your magnetic flux will cause this polarity to reverse. Okay, so going up and then it will go down at the bottom. So some of this flux will are actually transferred downward to the bottom of the equator. Okay, and then the reverse process will start to happen. So you will notice here, dito at the start, the direction of the magnetic field is actually going northward. And then after this, after the complete rotation or after the complete cycle, the polarity reverses. Okay. Usually it takes about 11, 10, or 11 or 12 years to complete this cycle. And we call that your solar cycle. Okay. And that is and then the whole solar cycle, that means going back to its original configuration actually takes about 22 years. Okay, so this is your typical simplified version of the solar dynamo. So what I have here is a animation of that very simple explanation or solar dynamo. So you will notice here, no, again that because of the differential rotation, twisting and turning of the magnetic field lines will actually generate those magnetic field, complicated magnetic field configuration at the surface of the sun. And the emergence of the this magnetic field lines towards the surface of the sun is actually where your sunspots are being formed now. Okay, so underneath, this magnetic field line is actually slowly ejected, so to speak, no, due to the Coriolis effect towards outward towards the surface of the sun and sticking out of the surface. So usually this happens during high solar activity, wherein more sunspots are actually formed. Okay, just to give you a very simple description of the differential rotation, usually it is described by this equation wherein omega is the angular velocity. It's actually an empirical equation. Okay, so omega is the angular velocity, which is degrees per day. Phi is the solar latitude, and ABCs are actually constants. And this depends on how the measurements are being made. Okay, so from this paper by Snodgrass and Ulrich in 1990, A, B, and C are actually estimated with these values. So these are pretty much accurate in determining what's the rotational period or the angular frequency or angular velocity of the sun at each latitude. So more or less, it travels fastest at the center, at the equator. It's about 25 days. And it can be as low as about 35 days near the poles. So this is one of the reasons why we have a very complicated magnetic field of the sun. Okay, so as mentioned earlier, that this differential rotation is actually is a very good model and very good reason as to the existence of your sunspots. Okay, as I demonstrated earlier. So this is an example of the image of the sun using the Solar Dynamics Observatory for this is a continuum using continuum spectrum last January 6, 2014. So we can see here that there is a very large sunspot group. We call this active region 1944. Okay. And this is actually much larger in terms of radius and size than your Earth. So if you're going to have a comparative view, the Earth would look like this in terms of size. And you will notice here that this main sunspot, this large sunspot, is maybe about 5-6 times in terms of radius. Okay, and it is so large that it is actually observable through the naked eye on a sunset as seen on Earth. Okay, ganun siya actually kalaki. Sunspots, as you already know, are actually composed of two parts. You have your umbra, so that's the darkest spot, and you have your penumbra. So this is a very close-up view as I showed you earlier. The umbra is actually very cold. Depicted by a very dark spot, but essentially this is actually if you cover the light from the surface of the sun, this is actually very bright too. Okay, but relatively, because the surface of the sun is so bright, this actually appears very dark compared to the outer surroundings. But in reality, this is actually bright as well. Now, this is a cold region of the sun, about 4,100 Kelvin only, but have a very strong local magnetic field. Okay, typically about 0.3 Tesla. So 0.3 Tesla, usually kasi, di ba, the unit that we use for regular magnetic field magnitude is about millitesla. So around this region, the magnetic field is actually of the order of 0.1 Tesla. So around 0.3 Tesla. Okay, and then it is surrounded by light and dark filaments. Okay, we call this your penumbra. Okay, so this is your typical, structure or anatomy of your sunspots. Okay, so we call this, as mentioned earlier, now we call this group of sunspots, we call them as active regions. So this is another picture, no, of the sun. This is dated April 4, 2014. So as you can see here, no? So you'll notice here that there are several sunspot regions. So these are actually named, okay, according to their appearances. Later, I will discuss to you how they're usually named. No? But basically, an active region of the sun is an area where there's a especially strong magnetic field, which is visually represented or visually illustrated or represented by your sunspots. Okay, so because I mentioned earlier that sunspots are actually regions of high magnetic activity. Okay, now these sunspots are frequently formed in active regions, and these active regions appear to be very bright in X-ray and even in UV images. So for example, if you have your UV light sensor or camera, or if you have a X-ray vision or UV region, these active regions will appear very bright. So that's why the SDO, Solar Dynamics Observatory satellite or spacecraft, actually has other eyes, so to speak, no? They can actually see or observe the sun in extreme UV. Okay, so this is an example of an image of the same sun at the same or approximately at the same time at extreme UV. The wavelength that was used here is 193 angstrom. So, and you will notice here, now, if I change wavelength filter, the sun will appear very differently. So we're going to discuss why this values of wavelengths are chosen. No? But anyway, but the point is that at different, even if you have the same spectrum, no, say EUV, at different wavelengths, the sun will still appear very differently. But the point is that those active regions will actually appear very bright at extreme UV or even in X-ray wavelength or spectrum. Okay, so this is an example of the image of the sun at the same time, around the same time at 304 angstrom. So that's 30.4 nanometer. So that's already extreme UV. So this is another example of the same sun again at 131 angstrom. So by knowing how the sun emits light, which or different features of the sun emit light, we can actually observe them by setting different sensors now. So for example, if you're going to use 131 angstrom, we can actually observe these active regions more closely, and we can actually observe solar flares using this figure or using these wavelengths. Okay, so speaking of solar flares, the solar flares and CMEs are actually mostly associated with this active region. So most of these events, the solar flares and CMEs, actually originate from this active regions. So that's why it's very important to really observe these active regions, okay? Because most likely flares and coronal mass ejections will come out of them, okay? So you will notice here that sunspots are actually grouped, okay, based on their appearance. So for example, this is one sunspot group. And this is actually named right from the start as it actually evolved. This actually evolved from a single spot, and then it grew into this. So from one single spot that grew to this configuration, all that time it will be named as one sunspot group. Okay, and this sunspots are actually parameterized in terms of the relative sunspot number. This is a sunspot index R. Sometimes we call this the Wolf number. And scientists have developed this formula, R equals K times 10G plus S, to quantify the relative number of sunspots that can be seen in the solar disks. Here, S is the number of sunspots, individual sunspots. G is the number of sunspot groups. And K is a factor that varies with location and instrumentation. So most countries actually observe sunspots, even Pag-asa. So Pag-asa has its own observation of sunspots, and they actually calculate the relative sunspot number. Okay, and they submit it to a global database, and then that global database actually collects all observations from all parts of the globe, and they come up with a common relative sunspot number for every day. So yesterday, nung September 21, last Tuesday, the current sunspot number is 50. Okay? And if you're going to look at the past 30 days, it actually varies daily, depending on what is actually seen at the disk of the sun. Okay, so as you will notice here, for a very brief period, about 3 days, there are no observable sunspots. But right after that, the number of sunspots that is visible in the solar disk is now actually increasing. Okay, and then what is being done here is to look at the average per month, and then we graph it over the year. So this is an example of your monthly sunspot number from 2019, late 2009 to August last month, 2021. So you will notice here that the monthly average sunspot number is actually increasing and decreasing. Okay, this the period of increase and decrease, or the return of minimal solar activity to the next minimal solar activity, this number of years is about 11, 12, 10 years. And we call that your solar cycle. And we name those solar cycle by number, starting from solar cycle 1, which is started in 1755, and then it ended in 1766. The last full solar cycle that we had, which started in December 2008 until December 2019. The solar cycle 24, and just after December 2019, solar cycle 25 has been announced. So right now we are in the ascending phase of solar cycle 25. Okay, so relatively, if we're going to look at here, this is your solar cycle 24, and if you're going to observe the sun in both extreme UV and visible, okay, let's say for example in 2010, May 25 at May 21, the sun would look like this. So we notice here that there are very small bright spots here, so that means the activity of the sun is very low. Okay, which is correspond to the low sunspot monthly sunspot number. Okay, and then when you move to 2014 February 1, you can see that there are much activity, as you can see here in the UV spectrum. Okay, so this is your sunspots, very large sunspot group, and you can actually see it here in the extreme UV spectrum as bright lights. Okay? Sige. Now, Moving on, going to the next solar minimum, you can actually see that there is again a decreased solar activity sometime in 2018. So this is February 2, 2018. Okay, so this is actually one whole solar cycle already. Relatively, solar cycle 24 is it's about half in terms of magnitude as solar cycle 23. As you can notice here, this picture is actually captured, this series of images, annual images of the sun captured by the Hinode satellites. At again, it's extreme UV. So starting with 1996, which is the start of solar cycle 23. Okay, solar cycle 23 started in 1996, August, and then it ended in December 2008. Okay, so this picture of the sun using the Hinode satellites captured the sun from 1996 to all the way to 2018. So this captured two full solar cycle. As you will notice here, the years of solar maximum, we call this year solar maximum of the solar cycle 23 is much active than the solar maximum years of solar cycle 23. Solar cycle 25, solar cycle 24. So this is solar cycle 24. Solar cycle 25 is actually predicted to be as moderate as solar cycle 24. Now, if we're going to extend this solar cycle features or sunspot, monthly sunspot number to the past 6 solar cycles up to solar cycle 19, which started in solar cycle 19, you can see that there's generally a decrease in activity. Okay, there's a general decrease in activity of the sun, and it is predicted that, again, as I mentioned earlier, solar cycle 25 would have a similar activity just like solar cycle 24. Okay, and if we're still going to extend that further to the first solar cycle and to the years wherein sunspots are actually also observed through alternative means, you can actually trace back the solar cycle observation as early as the 1600s. Okay, so this is the start of solar cycle 1, and then you can count it. This is actually solar cycle 23. Yeah, this is solar cycle 23. Okay, you will notice here that there is a almost to none sunspot numbers is observed almost to none for a very extended period of time. So we call this the Maunder minimum, which officially started at around 1640 to about 1700. And they say that this is when an ice age occurred. So therefore, they mentioned that the solar activity is actually a good estimator of climate activities. However, the influence of sunspots or solar activity to the Earth's climate actually decreased because of the fact that other influences or other parameters or other processes that influence Earth's climate is actually more dominant nowadays, and that is your greenhouse effect or your greenhouse gases. So while there's still some what we call forcing from solar activity, but the effect of solar activity to the Earth's climate is very minimal compared to the effect of the other the effect of greenhouse gases to the Earth's climate. Okay, so anyway, so another important thing to notice here that aside from the remarkable 11-year variation of sunspots numbers, it is actually accompanied by a similarly regular variation in the latitude distribution of the sunspots, as well as in the polarity. We call this the butterfly diagram, wherein the latitude where your sunspots are actually observed, okay, varies with time as well, and the variation or the periodicity actually coincides with the activity of the sun. Okay, so you will notice here that the sunspots drift from higher latitudes of about 25 to 30 degrees north and south latitude of the sun, and they drift toward the equator to close to about 20 or maybe closer then to the sunspot. Okay, so that means as the number of sunspots increase and decrease over time, okay, the location where the sunspots are generally found actually move toward the equator. Okay, so this is another illustration of the periodicity of the solar activity of the sun. Another parameter that we use to describe or to parameterize the the activity of the sun or solar activity is the how radio waves is being emitted by the sun. So it has found out that radio waves with a wavelength of 10.7 centimeters, so we call this your X-ray X-ray flux, radio flux, solar radio flux F10.7, actually coincides with the same periodicity as your sunspots. So we can actually use F10.7 to parameterize solar activity as well, aside from sunspots. So aside from this, so you will notice, no, sunspots emit large emissions of X-ray and EUV. Okay, and then it also produces large amounts of radio waves. Okay, this F10.7 is actually radio wave spectrum. But in total solar radiance, the amount of energy emitted by the surface of the sun is actually also follows the 11-year cycle, similar to your sunspot number. So these are the things that we use to quantify solar activity. So ito yung tatlo, ito yung the three main parameters, yung relative sunspot number, solar radio flux F10.7, and solar irradiance. Okay, so these are your parameters to monitor solar activity. Okay, now as mentioned earlier, before we move to question and answer later, sunspots are regions of high magnetic activity, wherein sunspots are usually associated with strong local magnetic fields. Okay, and as we mentioned earlier, we use the concept of Frozen-in theorem to really say that these are actually magnetic field lines. So wherein the plasma from the surface of from the solar surface are actually trapped within these magnetic flux tubes. So because of that, we could actually observe the magnetic configuration of these local sunspots, the local magnetic field configuration of the local sunspots. Okay, so therefore we can actually characterize or categorize sunspots by their magnetic activity. Okay, so for example, this is the image of the sun last night. Okay, 17 UT. 17 UT plus 8 is 25. So this is around 1 a.m. kanina. So 1 a.m. of September 23. So this is the actual image of the sun, and you can actually see several active regions. So this is active region 2871. This is active region 2872, active region 2873, active region 2874, and active region 2875. Okay, so active regions are named according to their according to their chronological order as they appear in the disks in the solar disk. So for example, out of these 5 active regions, the naming convention tells us that this actually appeared first. This is what you saw earlier dun sa video na pinakita ko kanina. So the video that I showed you earlier. Okay. And then next that appeared is active region 2872. And then later on, 2873 appeared. And then 2874 and 2875 appeared later, respectively. So if we're going to zoom in, it would look like this. So you will notice here that this is a bit complicated already, but it did not started from this figure. Okay, so for example, 2873 generally has a pair of sunspot. But when it started to appear in, which I will show you later now, how this evolved. But this actually appeared as a single sunspot. Then it grew, okay, as time progressed. So these 2 very young sunspots, active region 2874 and active region 2875, are the newest or the latest active regions that is being observed right now. They may or may not evolve into this or more complicated than you saw earlier. So it will really depend on the activity of the sun. So pwedeng, for example, 2874 and 2875 would not grow as big as this or even larger. It can actually dissipate later, no? Or ano ba, ahead of this one. Okay. So as mentioned earlier, sunspots are regions, again, of strong local magnetic fields. So if you're going to see the magnetogram, okay, so the magnetogram actually images the sun in terms of their magnetic polarity. So typically a magnetogram would look something like this. Okay. So the difference in colors, the black and the white ones just show you that one area is opposite the other. Okay, so black areas of polarities opposite to the white ones. Okay, from this, we can actually characterize them based on their magnetic activities. For example, if we're going to move closer, no? AR 2871 is a very complicated magnetic configuration. But if we're going to look at 2872, one side is opposite to the other. So this is actually a bipolar. This is a bipolar sunspot group. So if you notice now, one will just emerge, the magnetic field lines will emerge from one side and then it will go back to the other side. Same goes with AR 7873. So one side is black, the other side is white. Same goes with 2874 and 2875. Okay, but as I mentioned earlier, no, these sunspot groups actually did not emerge like this already, no? I mean, right from the start. So it actually grew from a unipolar configuration into bipolar, and then eventually it will be more complicated. Okay, so because of this, we can actually classify magnetic classification. No? So usually sunspots emerge as a unipolar. So the configuration is called, or the classification is called, an alpha configuration. So this is an example of an alpha configuration. And then you can have your beta. Beta is basically bipolar, wherein you can actually see yung direct polarity ng sunspot region. So one side is positive, one side is negative, one side is north, one side is south, or whatever you may want to call it. But as when sunspots grow, they may not maintain this duality, no, or bipolar configuration. It can be actually complex like this. Even it looks like very simple, but this is an example of a gamma classification wherein a complex active region that is not classifiable as a bipolar. So these are the three major classes. There's an intermediate class, we call that your delta class. That's between beta and gamma, wherein there is still some semblance of beta or bipolar, but some of the polarities are mixed up at the middle. So this is actually more or less the general evolution of a sunspot. So it starts with a unipolar, and then it goes to bipolar, beta and gamma, and then eventually it will go to gamma, and then sometimes delta gamma. Okay, so it depends on the configuration. So, for example, yung sunspots natin kanina, AR2878, so this is actually categorized as beta gamma, beta delta. So that means it may actually develop into a complex gamma configuration. It may not. So 2872 is still in beta, as well as 2873, 2874, as well as 2875. So yung in all the visible active regions right now, all of them are still in their beta stage or beta category, except for AR2872, which is actually becoming a little bit more complicated. So it's now in the beta delta stage or beta delta classification. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, so this is an example of your evolution of your AR2872. So you will notice here, again, you will notice here that let me just oops, sorry. So if you will notice here, again, refresh. It started with this material started with a unipolar, and then it actually grew to bipolar. Skip to the end. Okay, so from a unipolar to a bipolar. You can actually see another example, AR2873. So you will notice here na hindi pa siya ganun ka-present, but you can already see some semblance here. If you can see my mouse, or if you can see my cursor. Okay, so you just watch out for this region. And if I play them here, so you will actually see that from these two actually emerge, and then the opposite polarities actually move to either side to becoming bipolar, starting with a unipolar configuration. Okay, so you can actually see it here. So by the way, this is a magnetogram that is already colorized. Hindi na siya black and white. To make the magnitude of the magnetic field at the poles more noticeable. Okay? Sige. So this is an example of your beta, evolution of your sunspot. Then we could actually monitor this accordingly. Okay? Sige. Let's look at it one more time. So the last image that you see here is actually the image of these sunspots last night. Okay, and it may actually evolve right now. You can go to my website to look at these figures. Okay, so next topic that we're going to discuss would be the solar atmosphere. Okay.